looking at multiplying fractions by whole numbers. For this you need to be familiar with simplifying fractions, equivalent fractions, converting mixed numbers and improper fractions, multiplying proper fractions by a whole number. Here we have a half multiplied by 6, a half times 6. That's the same as saying a half of 6. Where we have a multiplication sign, we're saying of. So for example, if you had 3 times 2, you're saying 3 of 2, 3 lots of 2. It's exactly the same with fractions. We're saying 6 lots of a half, or half a lot of 6. You've probably worked out that that's 3. And just to show you what that looks like, we have one cake here, and we're going to divide it into halves. And we have a half times by 2, 2 lots of a half. We have another whole cake, and we cut that one in half. Now we have 4 lots of a half, or a half times by 4. We've got 2 whole cakes, and a half of 4 is 2. We add another cake to make it 3 cakes, and we cut that cake in half. Now we have 6 halves altogether. 6 times a half, or a half times 6. A half of 6 is 3, which is how many cakes we have when we put all those halves together. A half times by 6 is 3. This time we have what's called a non-unit fraction. It has a numerator that isn't 1. 2/3 times by 3. Here we have 2/3 of a cheesecake. We're multiplying this by 3, so we're going to have 3 lots of 2/3. If we put these together to see how many complete cheesecakes we have, you can see we have 2 complete cheesecakes. So we've worked out that 2/3 times by 3, or 2/3 of 3, is 2. What if you didn't have the cheesecakes or any other objects to move around to see what this looks like? How could you do this just using the numbers? There's a formula we follow for multiplying proper fractions and whole numbers. Starting with the numerator, the number at the top of the fraction, that's multiplied by the number you're multiplying the fraction by, which in this case is 3. So we would multiply 2 by 3, and then having done that, we get the answer. We divide that by whatever the denominator is. So for this one, we would say 2 times by 3, or 3 times by 2, and that's 6. Now we take that 6 and we divide it by the denominator. 6 divided by 3, that's 2, and that gives you the answer to your calculation, which agrees with what we did with the images. Remember the formula for multiplying fractions by whole numbers. Start with the whole number that you're multiplying, multiply that by the numerator. Then when you have that answer, take the answer and divide it by the denominator. Here's one for you to try. So we're going to start with the images. 2/6 times by 12. So we have 2/6 of a cake, and there's 12 lots of that. 12 lots of 2/6. And if we put those together, we have 4 complete cakes. 2/6 times by 12 is 4. If we didn't have these images to look at, how could you make 2/6 times by 12 equal 4 just using the numbers? Pause the video, have a go at that. Starting with multiplying that 12 by the numerator, and then dividing that answer by the denominator. 2 times by 12, or 12 times by 2, that's 24. We take that 24 and divide it by the denominator. 24 divided by 6, that's 4, which agrees with our images. 2/3 multiplied by 4. Here we have our 4 lots of 2/3, and we look at how many cakes we have. We actually have a bit left over this time. We have 2 whole cheesecakes and 2/3 left over. So we have 2 2/3 of a cheesecake. Using the numbers for this one, multiply that 4 by the numerator. That's 4 times 2 is 8. Then we're going to take that 8 and divide it by the denominator. 8 divided by 3. Now this is where your knowledge of converting improper fractions comes in useful. So check those videos out if you're not sure about that. 8 divided by 3. We have 2 whole ones, and how many thirds left over? That's 2/3 left over. 2 2/3, which agrees with what was on our images. Here's one for you to try. This one will also give you an answer that has a whole number and a fraction, and you will need your knowledge of converting improper fractions to find the answer. Pause the video, have a go. Start by multiplying that 6 by the numerator. 6 times 3 is 18. Now we take the 18 and divide it by the denominator. 18 divided by 5. It won't divide exactly. Using our knowledge of converting improper fractions, 18 divided by 5. 5 goes into 18 3 times. And how many fifths are left over? That's 3/5. 3/5 times by 6 is 3 3/5. And just so you can see what that looks like, we have 6 lots of 3/5 of a pizza. And when we join those together to see how many complete pizzas we have 3 complete pizzas and an extra 3/5.